Pressure is a privilege. If you're in this spot, you should want this. You should want the pressure. You should want the expectations to be high. I mean, there's nights where sleep here, doing everything you can to make sure you cross every T, dot every I to make sure you're in position to win.
The 21st head coach of Michigan football, Sherrone Moore.
And when I think about Michigan football, one of the first words that comes to my mind is just culture.
When you come there, you better have your lunch pail and get ready because you're going to be in a dogfight with them. You don't know what you're going to get into until you get to that position. And I had no idea. I thought I knew, but I didn't. And I just took off my coat and my tie and I started doing drills on the chair. And Coach Harbaugh loved it. He's sitting back. He's got his chew in. He's like, show me that again. You're like, man, are we going to be here next year? You either adapt or die. And we had to adapt. That's all we think about. We think about the game 365 days a year. That game's always on our mind, and it'll always stay like that. I wear my emotions on my sleeves. I don't see it as a sign of weakness. My players understood and know me and understand like how much love I have for them. Growth and comfort don't coexist. It's going to be hard. It's going to be, it could be different. It's okay. Who cares? Work at it, get better at it.
5 years from now, what do you want Michigan football to look like under Sherrone Moore?
Yeah.
What's up, guys? Today I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan to sit down with Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore. We're going to have a great conversation about his career, how he got to this place, how he got the job at Michigan, stories about Jim Harbaugh, stories about the ups and downs of this past season for Michigan. Before we get there, subscribe to this podcast, leave me a comment, leave me a like, share it with a friend, post this on social media. All your support allows me to travel around the country, do this podcast, and bring you guys inside conversations with the biggest names in college sports. Let's go talk to Sherrone Moore. There he is.
How you doing?
How are you, man?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Really good.
Appreciate you having us out. Appreciate you, man.
Coach, appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, excited to come out. I've been trying to make this happen for a while since you got the job, so I appreciate you.
Excited.
Appreciate you having us. It's been cool to follow your career. I know we talked before, years ago when I was coaching for a little bit, and it's been cool to just see your rise from tight ends coach, offensive line coach to head coach. I want to start with, we're sitting in the team meeting room right now. Let's go back to that first team meeting. You're the new head coach at Michigan, first-time head coach. What's going through your mind as you walk through those doors right here?
Ironically, my first team meeting wasn't even in this room. It was in the weight room.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a chance just to be around the team, and they already knew me. I knew them, but obviously there was immense change. We just had a phenomenal season, won the national championship, but there's all this change. There's all these things going on. So for me, it was trying to calm our team down and make sure we're in a good place mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I felt like we did that, and I felt like we put them in a better place. But it's a constant, it's constant effort, especially in today's day and age, and fight in college football. But it's fun, I think the still purity game, the love of the game is still there, and I love this team, love these players.
Yeah. Why was the meeting in the weight room? That's just where the players were at the time?
Yeah, that's just where they were.
You wanted to met them there?
Yeah, it was a Saturday, I think, or something, and they had a workout, and I was like, you know what, this is where I'm going to just have the meeting.
I love it. Yeah.
Just want to see him there. I saw him there, went down there, and it was, we had the meeting there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mentioned your career to get to this point. If you could pick out one pivotal moment in your career as an assistant, as a player, is there one moment that you feel like allowed you to be where you are today?
I say there's probably two. The first one would be me as a graduate assistant at the University of Louisville. I was an offensive line graduate assistant. And, Charlie Strong was the head coach at that time. We went 5 games into the season. We'd lost to Marshall. And I was sitting in the big room. Actually, it was me and Shane Steichen, who's now the head coach at the Colts.
Yeah.
He was a GA too.
Right.
And we just lost. Charlie kind of, going through things in his head. And, the next day, he pulls me in. He says, hey, you're going to coach the tight ends. And I'm like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, you're going to coach the tight ends for the rest of the season.
Right.
So earlier in that year, Sean Watson, who's one of my mentors, he's now the head coach at Wofford, he told me, hey, I think you should start learning the passing game.
Yeah.
So I think that moment of change, a sudden change that happened from that Saturday night to that next Monday where I'm on the field in 7-on-7 coaching the tight ends, coaching pass concepts, like having to change like that and adjust and lead a room then was a huge moment for me to learn how to change and to adapt and sudden change. And I think the next biggest moment was when Coach Harbaugh allowed me to be the offensive line coach here and co-offensive coordinator here in 2021. To lead that room was a very, huge honor to be an offensive line coach at Michigan, especially an offensive line coach in general, but here at Michigan, something special, something different. So that moment was huge for me.
So a lot of the viewership on this podcast is like young coaches. I think it's cool to hear you were a GA at one point too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You were making scout cards.
Like, I was a GA for a guy was Steve Crackthorpe, who was the head coach at Louisville. That was my first GA job. I got done playing in Oklahoma, gone back and forth on what I want to do as far as like, should I go pursue the NFL? I don't know. I don't think I'll get drafted. I'll probably be a free agent, all that. I was like, I'm going to coaching. Yeah. I worked in the academic building for a year, and then really that first semester, and then ended up getting a graduate assistant job. I guess in 2009, the spring at Louisville, with Matt Wells was the connection between him and Josh Heupel.
Got it.
And so Matt just got the offensive coordinator job at Kansas State. Awesome man, awesome human being. So I went to Louisville, became a graduate assistant there, and I used to, just like every other graduate assistant, like I used to make the copies, do all that. Coach Crackthorpe always wanted a raisin bagel. Every morning, staff meeting, 7 a.m., I'd have a napkin out, raisin bagel, buttered, set for him, and toasted.
You didn't butter his toast, did you?
Oh, I buttered the bagel. Everything he wanted. I put it on there, let it ride, and that's what he wanted every morning, so I made sure the head coach had it. Yeah. And I come from a military family. My dad's a retired military vet, and my mom was in the military. Both of them retired now. So for me, it's always been about discipline, doing the little things, and that was a part of it. I knew that was a part of it. And in no shape or form did I say, like, I'm going to be the head coach at Michigan. That wasn't my goal at that point. My goal was just to be better. And be better that day and figure out what I can do to help the program to be better, and that's all I wanted to do.
What were you making as a GA at Louisville? $3,000 a year?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it was like 10. I lived in this little apartment.
You probably felt good with 10.
Oh, I felt great. The world was mine.
I love it. Take me inside the process of getting named the head coach at Michigan and what that looks like. I imagine that, it was probably a relatively easy decision for administration and everything you've done here and how much respect the players had for you. But what's the inside baseball of like how that decision gets made and how you actually became the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it was easy. I hope I made it easy for them, but I'm sure that there was definitely some conversations that they had to have. And, Coach Harbaugh gets hired with the Chargers and kind of knew what was going to happen, had an idea. And the announcement was made. I was actually in Houston. So I was in Houston with Ron Bellamy, our wide receiver coach. And I was getting ready to get on a plane to Dallas. Yeah. And I go through TSA, phone buzzes, Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Yeah. And I talked to him like 3 hours before that and kind of knew something was going to go on. And I get a call from Ward Manuel, our AD. He's like, hey, where are you? I'm like, I'm in Houston. He's like, get on a plane right now. You got to come back. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I call Albert Karchnia, our director of player personnel. He books me a flight. I get back that night. I get here. I'm in Schembechler probably till 3 a.m, setting up, get my interview right. I go to, I do my interview the next day. And then I think it was 2 days later, I become the head coach, sign it. And then you sit in the chair. And I think probably every head coach you meet, like you don't know what you're going to get into until you get to that position. And I had no idea. I thought I knew, but I didn't, because I got in the chair. I was like, all right, what do I do now? There's so many things to do, so many things to get done. So I got in the chair, started calling all our players, trying to make sure that was good. Because in this world now today, I mean, you get a new head coach. Yeah. Transfer portal's open. Yeah. So, like, you got first-round draft picks. You got great kids that you wanted. We just won a national title, so everybody's trying to come after our players. And I did everything to kind of retain our roster and then continue to build our roster. And then at that time, you're trying to go recruit. And then you're trying to retain the staff because the whole staff's going out all over the place. So feels like right now it's just so much. It's not an easier place. It's in a better place because of stability and where we're at now as a program.
What was that interview like? Were you kind of prepared? I'm sure you had kind of been thinking about that moment during your career, right?
I mean, I didn't really start thinking about during COVID, I started making like head coaching books. I started thinking about the opportunity that would come because knowing that I possibly be the offensive line coach at some point. You know, that's what I wanted to be, and then where that would lead me to. So during COVID, I started, my agent, who became my agent, and one of my really, really good friends, Thayer Evans, like, we just went through the process of like making books, doing different things, and preparing me for those moments, doing mock interviews. And so that interview process was stressful because you don't know what's going to get asked. You have no idea, but you have a plan of what you want to respond to it. And you just hope that when you regurgitate that information that it comes out how you want it to come out. That sounds good. So for me, it worked out well, and I love this place.
You mentioned the interview, then getting the job. Who actually tells you get the job? Is it Ward Manuel calls you and tells you? Or like,
yeah, Ward actually told me, and it was a face-to-face. Hey, you got it. Let's go. Handshake, sign, and it was outstanding. First person I called was my mom, then I called my family.
What was their reaction?
Tears.
Yeah,
tears, joy, laugh, love, everything you can think of. The funniest response was my 5-year-old daughter says, "Congrats," and I say, "Thanks, babe." She said, "I'm the boss now." I'm like, "You were the boss." So like,
that's awesome.
Shiloh, you're one of a kind. I love
so
you.
Good.
So late too.
Yeah. That first day, so you sit in the chair, and you mentioned the staff, retaining your staff. You mentioned the players, retaining your roster, and having to implement your plan now in the program. What's the biggest thing that surprised you on that first couple of days on the job?
I mean, just how much stuff that has nothing to do with football that you deal with.
Yeah.
As the offensive coordinator and O-line coach here, I sat in a room with 2 big screens and a laptop, and all I did was watch football. It's schedules, it's administration, it's just making sure everything's aligned in daily process. So that was the biggest thing that I kind of knew, but actually going into it, you don't realize how much you deal with it and how much other stuff you deal with besides football. And so it's been refreshing to be able to get back into the football piece, because it wasn't like that, especially when I first started.
Yeah. You grew up in Derby, Kansas, right? What's something about growing up in Derby, Kansas that's shaped who you are now?
I mean, I think the family vibe, the togetherness of the community, and how thoughtful all the people were, and how detailed, hardworking, blue collar that town is. I moved there in middle school. I'm a military kid, so I've lived in. I was born in Texas. It was California, Panama, England, New Jersey, then to Kansas, and like I spent from 6th grade really on, or 7th grade really on in Kansas. But I think really the family values and the mentality of the blue collar mentality that town really represents is really, really what has molded me today.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about you taking over this job is a lot of times when you take over a job, maybe not a lot, but I feel like most of the time you're taking over a program that had struggled or had fired their coach.
Yeah.
You're taking over a program that won a national championship, right? And Coach Harbaugh has done such a great job of building this place that there was kind of a way that it's done, right? This is the Michigan way. But at the same time, you're the head coach now, and you have to put your stamp on things and how you want to do it. How'd you kind of balance that, and especially in year one of like, here's how it's done. It's worked this certain way, but maybe there's 1 or 2 things that you want to tweak and do things your own way.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to find the balance and find exactly what you want to do, because I think you don't want to go into this situation like we had and change everything that worked, because I don't think that's going to work. But you also don't want to just do everything exactly the same. Yeah. So I think as I've really learned over this past year of things that I want to do, whether it be practice, whether it be schedules, whether it be how we operate on a daily basis, staff-wise, schedule time with our staff and the families and all that. So it's been a learning curve for me to figure out exactly what I want to do, and it started to click even more and more and more, because you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna do things that you thought, I should have did that a little bit better. I should have did that a little bit better. But I think as long as you're consistent with the overall message of what you want, and then keep an alignment within the staff, and one that the players and the staff see that you care, but you also hold them to a high standard. Yeah. I think once you do that, then all the other things that you want within the organization you can change and you can fix, because I think you always have to adapt.
Yeah. Now being a year plus into it, what's one piece of advice you would go back and tell yourself on day one on the job?
You can't solve all the problems in one day. Like, make a list of things you want to do, and if you don't get them done, it's okay. You don't got to stress about it. Like, there's another day coming, because I think you try to figure out every single thing you can do, and and that's not realistic. So you got to figure out what thing you need to, attack today, and not necessarily problems, but things you need to attack every single day, and figure out what's the most important, what's the most pertinent, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I'm sure in that seat, that coach's seat, you're constantly you're on a ticking clock towards the first game, right?
That's
or like
right.
towards camp.
Oh yeah,
constant.
Yeah, you're on. Right now it's a clock towards spring ball, and then it's a clock. We're still in winter
Always
cycle.
something.
There's spring ball, then there's recruiting in May, and then there's summer cycle and camps and official visits, and you think about that time in July. But that when you're in July, you're thinking about training camp.
Weeks away.
So it's just constant.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you learned from Jim Harbaugh?
Oh man,
Probably a lot.
I learned so many lessons, but I probably say that just because you've done something one way doesn't mean you always need to do it that way. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to go outside the box and do things outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's why he's one of the best, because he's not afraid to, be uncomfortable. And we always talk about here that growth and comfort don't coexist.
Yeah.
So you have to have that mindset, whether it's in life, whether it's in football, that it's going to be hard. It's going to be, it could be different. It's okay. Who cares? Work at it, get better at it, but try to find the best way for that team, those people, that group, to attack that problem.
Yeah. What was it like being a coordinator for Jim Harbaugh? Like, I'm just trying to think. Did he ever give you a good ass ripping? Did he ever was he always like kind of, because I feel like he's super positive from the outside looking in.
He's super positive.
Is he like always that way?
He's not a big yeller. No, he's not like. I did a lot more yelling than he did, and I think he liked that. I think he liked the fact that I could be the bad cop, and he could, interact with the guys.
You guys also had a lot of success when that was
Yeah, so it's easy when you go 15-0. There's not a lot like yelling.
There's nothing to yell at you about.
But like even like games we lost, like he was probably the best I've ever been around of like just absorbing that and figuring out how to get better from it, because you can you get in those situations of being uncomfortable, like we went this year. This year we go 8-5, and we're at a point where you lose to Indiana, and you can easily just blow up on the whole staff and blow up on the players, and that's probably not going to be the best way to handle it. So figure out the best way to handle people, and I think that's what he was ultimately great at is handling people and being around people and showing people that he cared and that he loved them and he take care of them. And he was obviously the best I've been around, and one of my big brothers.
What was the process like of, I think you were at Central Michigan, right? And you get hired as the tight ends coach at Michigan. What are you, 20-something at that time? Late 20s?
26 or 20.
Yeah, I mean, like, as one of the youngest coaches in the country, how'd you get that job? What was the connection? What was the process like?
So Dan Enos was here. So Dan Enos was the head coach at Central my first year. And then Dan Enos went to Bama, went to Arkansas. He was here as the receiver coach. So I think Greg Fry had just left and went somewhere, and Dan calls me. I'm on the way back from vacation, driving from Louisville, Kentucky, where my wife's from, and we're driving. And Dan calls me. He's like, "Hey, the tight end job at Michigan's open. Would you be interested?" I said, "Are you serious? Are you really asking me this?" Absolutely. So I get on the phone with him. He said, "All right, Coach Harbaugh is going to call you within the next couple of days." And I hate that. I hate the fact when somebody's, "I'm going to call you in the next couple of days." So when? What day?
Such a big call.
Like, that's a huge call. I'm sitting on the couch watching Law and Order, and 734 number. I'm like, Ann Arbor, who's this? And it's Coach Harbaugh. And he's just, talking, just getting to know each other. He's like, "Well, I heard a lot of great things. We'd love for you to come interview." So I actually did, I was in the 35 under 35 at the AFCA with Jay Harbaugh. And I actually did a talk. I did a clinic talk at the AFCA convention I think it was on a Saturday, or no, it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday because the national championship was going to happen on Monday. So I did that talk, and then I flew out, and then I flew back to Michigan, got in a car, was in Michigan, and I drove to Ann Arbor the next morning. Did the interview there. It was me and like 7 other candidates, and it was, I'm in the interview, and it's Coach Harbaugh, it's Jack Harbaugh, it's Jay Harbaugh, it's Don Brown, it's Pep Hamlet. So it's like all these big name coaches or coaches that I've looked up to or I know really well. The offense coordinator, Don Brown's in there, defense coordinator at the time, and they're grilling me, asking me questions. So I got up on the interview, and I was always told by one of my mentors, like, when you do an interview, like, don't just sit there and you need to like interview. So I got to about an hour in, I just took off my coat and my tie and I started doing drills on the chair, and Coach Harbaugh loved it. He's sitting back. He's got his chew in. He's like, show me that again. Like, show me how you're going to base block that. Then he pulled one of the managers or one of our GAs. He's like, show it on him. Show how you're going to drive block this guy. And I was like in a sweat. My back was sweating.
Yeah.
And then I went up on the board, did film, and that was like a 4 or 5 hour deal. And then, so I was like, all right. I was really good. He's like, all right, we're going to, put you in a hotel. I was like, hold on, what? He's like, yeah, can you stay overnight? I was like, I don't have any clothes. He's like, we'll get you some clothes. So called Gary. Hey, can we get some clothes for Sherrone?
Yeah.
I think he's going to stay overnight. I was like, I'm thinking like, am I going to get the job? Maybe I'll get the job. I don't know. So I went to dinner, and Ben Herbert had just got hired. Abigail Connor had just got hired, who's here now still. And I went to dinner that night with Mark Terrasani, who's now the DFO at Illinois, still a good friend. And I was just like, dude, did you get it? He's like, yeah, I got the job. Do you? I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I
One
went.
more day.
One more day. And I literally went back to the office in my same suit without the tie. And he told me I got the job the next morning, and I was ecstatic.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Yeah, life changed at that moment.
Crazy.
Right? I mean, going from Central Michigan to Michigan, big
A little
big leap.
different. Yeah, a little different.
Yeah. One of the things about you during your career as an assistant, now as a head coach, you've always been a great recruiter. Like, you've always been on the, top recruiting rankings, and you recruited well when you were the tight ends coach and the offensive line coach. What do you think goes into being a great recruiter? Like, I'm sure it's something you pride yourself in, but it's much more than just recruiting, right? It's relationships, it's building a program. What do you think makes a great recruiter?
I think you got to dive deep into like the kids and the families. You got to be, there's not really a secret, so I'm not giving away any secrets, but it's really the time and the process that you do to get to know these kids.
Yeah.
Because in this world we are in today, it's different, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, but there's still a relationship. There's still a thought process of, I want my son to play for a man that I respect, that I think will take care of him in a bigger way, and that cares more about him than just as the number on his jersey. So I try to express that and show that to them and understand, like, I have 105 players here who are my kids, and I got 2 girls at home. So I got 107 kids, and that's how I treat them. Like, you get disciplined like you're my kids, but you get loved like you're my kids. So I think for us, and I think our staff does a really good job doing that as well. And the other piece is that I've always had great people around me to help and support, because it hasn't been just me, recruiting any player. I try to make sure there's another piece, another touch point with the staff and other people around us to help us. So that's a huge piece to it too.
You've had a lot of big recruiting wins. Do you have a recruiting loss that still haunts you to this day?
Brock Bowers. That
would have been a good one.
That would have been a good one. Brock was hard. Brock was
You thought
hard.
you were going to get him?
Yeah, for a little bit. And then he wanted to go smaller town with the Georgia Office. It was really good. So kudos to him. Theo Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one. It was down to the wire. It was us and Penn State. Yeah, it was a good one. Great family.
Was that Tyler Bowen was the tight ends coach?
Yeah. He did a great job with him. So those two haunt me probably the most. But we've had some good wins too. So I feel good about that.
Right. I remember when I spent my brief 2 years at coaching Colson Loveland. I remember Colson's film coming up and everyone saying he'll never be good because he comes from Idaho. And you certainly saw something in him, right?
Yeah, me and then Jay Harbaugh really tapped it off and finished it. And that kid's unbelievable.
Unreal.
Going to be a first-round draft pick. Great person, great player.
Yeah. When it comes to building a coaching staff now, and now you have to hire coaches and evaluate coaching talent, what are the things you look for in young coaches when deciding if they're going to be a good fit in your program?
Yeah, I think first of all, great people, great human beings that really want to put the players first, because that's how I look at it. Like, if you're really so concerned about your Instagram followers and whether you're verified and what your next position is going to be, then you're probably not going to be a great fit here. Like, you got to be really driven by the players. You got to be a great teacher, because we're all teachers. You're a teacher in life. You're a teacher here. And you got to be that. And then you got to be a great motivator and recruiter, especially a younger coach. You got to be able to relate to these kids and be able to recruit at a high level, but you got to be able to motivate. Because every guy's the head coach of their room. So they got to do a really good job doing that.
How do you mentioned being a young coach and recruiting, and you're obviously a young coach right now as the head coach. How do you kind of balance being a young coach who relates really well to the players and has great relationships, but at the same time, you do a great job of commanding respect. I think that's, when I was coaching, like, saw the dynamic of, like, it's tough when you're trying to relate to the players so much, but you also need them to respect you as, like, I'm the authority figure here. We're not friends. You know what I mean? How do you kind of balance that? Even when you were a younger coach, but even now as a head coach.
Yeah, I think when I was I think it was the hardest when I was a GA and I went to be a, position coach.
Yeah.
That was the hardest time because it was, I think when you're a GA, you're still trying to figure out your niche of how do I command the respect? How do I do that? But you don't have time to do that. So it didn't take me very long to figure out, like, dude, I know we're close in age, but you're not my boy.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going and hanging out.
Yeah.
You're not my friend.
I'm Coach Moore,
like,
not Sherrone.
I'm Coach Moore. Don't call me Sherrone. Like there's a respect level there of that we need to have there. Like, yeah, we can be cool and we can talk about life, but I'm not your friend. And I think they have to get that and they have to understand that really early in the process. But like here, there's enough age gap, but also I think there's just the piece that they understand that I want the best for them, and that if the best for them is that they need to be disciplined, then I'm gonna do it. Or if the best for them is that they need to be celebrated, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna put them in the best position that I think is possible, for them to make sure that all their dreams come true.
Yeah. And I'm sure part of that for you is also just the being honest with all the players, right? And being straightforward. I feel like so many coaches aren't because of just the business nature of it. But, is there any examples of, and come to mind, of like a tough conversation you had to have with a player? You don't need to say who it was, but that was like, hey, I had to do the right thing here, had a tough conversation, and it ended up being a great result from it.
I mean, I think there's a couple, there's players that I've dealt with in the past, there's players that I've dealt with recently that transparency is the best thing. Like, you can't lie to them. Tell them exactly what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And that usually works out for the best, whether it's the best for both of us, whether it's the best for one side, whatever it is. You just need to be completely honest with them. You're doing good. You're not doing good. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to go to class. You need, like, whatever those things are. I think transparency is the number one thing that you have to do to accomplish that. And then ultimately that builds the trust that you need.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at this past season, I know some highs with the beating Ohio State. And I'm sure there's moments where it didn't go the way you wanted it to. What's the biggest lesson you learned from this past season as your first year as a head coach?
Man, I think the biggest lesson is that to trust the process. There's a process that you want to do things, and like you said, it doesn't always go your way, but never panic. I don't think you can. Once you hit the panic button as the head coach, the whole building feels it. And I don't think we ever did. I think that's the cool thing about what happened this year. Obviously the loss is not what we wanted, not what we aimed for in this program and the standard of this program. And going forward, looking forward to pushing it in the right direction. But feels like those things were some things that we really did learn. We always talked about. Ironically, you say that, not losses, they were lessons. And they were lessons for us as a program that we'll continue to learn. And our guys right now are so motivated off of those lessons to get better. And it's awesome to watch our team right now.
It was, I just thought of this as you were talking. It was really cool to see your emotional reaction. What was that after your first win when you were the interim head coach? And you were it was like a raw emotional reaction in the 2023 season. I think it was.
You don't have to show that.
Well, it was it was such a cool moment because it was like clear that it's not planned. You couldn't control it. You probably watch it now. You're like, oh, why'd I do that?
Goodness.
But what went into that? Like what was the emotion that came out there? And I think one thing I took away from when I saw it was like, this dude loves Michigan, and he loves his players.
Oh, yeah.
You can
That's
tell
exactly
that.
what it was. I love my players. I love this place. Coach Harbaugh, like I said, is a big brother to me. And everything about the hard work that, this is going on now my 8th year. That was going to my 7th year. So there was a lot of hard work, a lot of long nights. And, I mean, there's nights where sleep here. Nights where you're here, you're doing everything you can to make sure you cross every T, dot every I to make sure you're in position to win. And for me, that moment was like, man, I got the chance to represent this program as the head coach at Michigan on a huge stage with these players and with this staff for this program, for the alumni, for everybody. And I wear my emotions on my sleeves, so I wasn't going to hide it. And I don't see it as a sign of weakness. I just felt like it just happened. It was raw. It wasn't planned.
Yeah.
It came out, but my players understood and know me and understand like how much love I have for them, so they understand where it was coming from.
Yeah, the players loved it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, now they give me a hard time.
Yeah, I was
sometimes,
they probably made fun of you a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, especially the linemen. But
That's awesome.
but it's all good. But we got after it after that,
awesome.
so it was good.
The reality of being the head coach of Michigan is there's extremely high expectations all the time and eyes on you at every turn. How do you handle that personally? How do you handle the expectations? I'm sure you thrive in the expexptation, you want it, but how do you cope with it and kind of handle it day to day?
Yeah, I think for me, like, pressure is a privilege. So if you're in this spot, you should want this. You should want the pressure. You should want the expectations to be high. Our standards are high. You want them to be high. But all I can control is right now. All I can control is today and getting better today. And that's really what I've tried to focus on a lot, and been as deep into the daily word and the Bible as much as possible. And how much growth you can get there is huge, So just focusing on today and focusing on what we can do today to get better is all we're going to do. And if I can continue to do that and just stack the days, that's going to put us in a great place.
Yeah. The interesting thing about taking over the job when you did is just that there was no handbook for how to handle NIL, the portal, roster management, NIL collectives, like all the stuff that came into it. I guess I'll start with just NIL in general. How do you feel like the NIL commitment's been from Michigan and the fan base and the alumni? And how have you kind of used it to your advantage to build the roster here at Michigan?
Yeah, I think we're as competitive as anybody in the country in that phase, and trying to do it in ways to make sure that our players understand that it's not just about earning an extra dollar in your pocket. It's about longevity and what you can do for set up for your future, and put yourself in position to make yourself successful, not just in football but in life. So that's been a big piece of it, and I think we just continue to. You got to grow. You got to keep getting better at it, because it's just like anything else. It's going to change and all those things. So
gotta evolve.
we got to make sure we as an organization, but even as a football community in the NCAA, the Big Ten, all that, just continue to have a plan to make sure that we put our athletes in a good place to make it so that it's great for everybody, and we can all benefit from it.
Well, one of the biggest stories of the offseason was landing 5-star Bryce Underwood.
Yeah.
A huge win for you guys on the recruiting trail. What was the most interesting part of that recruitment?
I mean, I think to just get to talk to him, to be around him, to grow with him. The kid is an amazing human being. He is extremely selfless. He's extremely humble, and all he wants to do is work. That's all he wants to do. So you see this #1 player in the country. You have this vision of what it could be, and he's the exact opposite of the prima donna. I think I got all the answers guy. I mean, the guy's the first guy in the building. He's the last one out. You got to tell him to get out the building, and he told us that. Like, he's like, you're gonna have to tell me to leave, and the dude just does not want to leave the building. So he's an awesome teammate, awesome player, and excited to watch him.
I mentioned NIL and the portal. Are there any solutions that you have in mind, or anything you think that needs to change in college football to make just, whether it's like level playing field, coaches calendar, I mean, all the stuff that's getting talked about right now? Do you ever think about any of that stuff? Or?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. There's definitely some avenues that we have to, as coaches, figure out what's the best avenue for everybody, not just for your school or your conference, but for every conference, to make sure it's a level playing field for all of us. Because at the end of the day, we're all doing this for the players. We're all doing this for the student athletes. And if we're really doing it for the student athlete, we have to gear everything towards that. Gear towards getting a degree, gear towards graduation, and making sure that people are in a good place from an academic standpoint. So that's really we have to focus on figuring out how can we get this transfer portal, all that. How can we get this focus that's going to put them in a good place to get a degree at the end of the day.
You hired Chip Lindsey as your offensive coordinator this offseason. What have you seen from him since he's been here on campus leading your offense that gives you excitement about the upcoming season? Yeah,
I mean, Chip is an awesome, innovative offensive mind. Very excited about the direction we're going. Just constant, conversations about how to change, how to do things different, but how to keep some things the same. And really all about the strengths of the guys you have on the field, and how can we tool to them. And really excited about the things that he's done in the past with the explosive passing games he's been a part of, meshing the run games that we've had and he's had. And super excited for him and for us as a program with him here.
One of the things I talk about a lot on this show, just even with my career, is overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
Anyone who's reached your level of success at some point in your career has faced adversity and had to
Mm-hmm.
overcome it. So looking back on your career, whether it's recent, far back, whatever,
Yeah.
what's a moment where you feel like you faced the most adversity and how'd you overcome it?
I think the 2020 season, as a program, we faced huge adversity. You go into a season that you're 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
I think we ended up, and you're like, man, are we even going to be here next year?
Yeah.
And coach's salary gets cut, and things happen, and we really just recommitted to each other, recommitted to Michigan, and obviously we made some things more tailored to us as a football program. We obviously brought a new defensive coordinator. We brought Mike McDonald in with our new style of defense. We thought that was important. And then offensively, we definitely went back to the identity that Coach Harbaugh had with the Niners, at Stanford, at different places. And it wasn't him, saying, hey, we have to do this, but it was us also realizing, like, we need to change. You either adapt or die. And we had to adapt and change and make sure that we did things from a scheme standpoint, whether it be how we run the ball, when we run the ball, what the play actions look like, what the drop back look like schematically, to make sure that we were in a good position and put our players in a good position to be successful, and felt like we did that.
Yeah. You did such a good job here of building a great offensive line. That's like the identity of Michigan football. So I'll nerd out and ask you a football question. Like, take me through how you identify a great offensive line prospect. Like, what are the things you're looking at on film, whether it's high school, portal, that you're like, hey, these are the things we need to see on film to get a guy?
Yeah, I think, for a great offensive lineman, I think size is obviously a huge piece of it, but there's guys that are undersized that are really good.
Yeah.
You look at the guy that's at North Carolina this past year, Willie Hampton, I think, 5'11".
Yeah.
I mean, he's a monster. We had a center here, Drake Nugent, who was only 6'1", and he say he's 6'2", but he's not. Sorry, Drake. But I mean, he was an absolute dude. Was a first-team All Big Ten player. So the size piece, the frame piece is definitely something we look at. The flexibility in the hips and ankles, all that. But there's a mindset, there's a mentality that each guy has to have, and you can't get that through film. You can see some things on film from a physical standpoint, but there's some deep conversations and thought process that you have to have with these kids to figure out when it gets tough, who's going to be there on 3rd and 1 and make those plays, who's going to want the ball ran behind them. And those are really the guys that you want, those guys that the tough, hard-nosed, physical players that when it gets hard, they're going to thrive. And those are the guys you want on your team.
Who's the best offensive lineman you've coached?
That I've coached.
This could be a tough question. You might piss some people off with this.
Yeah, they're going to be mad. That's a trap. I mean,
you can name a few.
Yeah, I'll name a few. I mean, the two guards that we had the past 3 years, Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinner, probably as good as anybody I've been around. Oluwolu Timmy obviously was really good. He won the Remington. And the Outland. But all those guys, I mean, you talk about Ryan Hayes, Carson Barnhart, Trente Jones, Zach, Drake, Ladarius Henderson, LD, man, all those, the guys that we had in the past 3 years, it was such a blessing to be around all those guys all the time. It was awesome. And, coaching those guys was phenomenal.
When I think about Michigan football, one of the first words that comes to my mind is just culture, like the culture you built here. How have you approached building the culture and keeping the culture in this new era of college football, where you have guys who you're bringing in transfers who don't know the culture and may have to play right away, so they're not developing in it, but also you're losing some guys who kind of might have been culture builders that ended up transferring because of playing time. How do you approach keeping the culture and building it right now?
I think the biggest piece that we've done is that we have guys on the program that understand it. You got true leaders, the Max Bredesons, the Ernest Hausmans, the TJ guys. Those are guys that, Rod Moore, guys that were captain. We got Rod and Max were both captains last year, and they're both back. But you talk about a guy, specifically Max, that sets your culture of who you are and what you do on a daily basis, not just on the football field, but out in life. Those are the type of guys you want. And I'd go back to that 21 season. Aiden Hutchison had a team meeting in here, player-only meeting, and I just heard about murmurs of what happened. It was Aiden, it was Josh Ross, it was Andrew Vastardis, and it was Hassan Haskins, who all ended up being captains that year. And they basically stood up in front of the team and told everybody, like, look, we're going to win, and if you don't want to be a part of it, leave. And a couple people left. A couple people weren't there. So I think when your players run your team,
Mhm.
you're going to have a good team. You know,
Yeah.
if the coaches have to continually bark on what's happening and what's going on and police everything, then you're probably going to have a problem. But when
Yeah.
you got players doing it, which we do now, it puts you in a
Yeah.
really good place.
How have you balanced or strategically approached building from the portal versus high school? You know, you got the balance of like you got to win now, which is
Yeah.
maybe some portal guys, but you also want to build that culture in your program.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think you really want to, we try to pride ourselves on building from the high school ranks, and you use the portal as a supplement
Yeah.
to different positions. So we don't want to build our whole team off the portal. We know there's going to be some fits for us in the portal, but really want to be more so directed in the high school ranks. But obviously, I've used the portal as much as we can.
Yeah. I posted on my Instagram that I was coming to interview, and I said, "What do you guys want to know from Coach Moore?" And every
Yeah.
question I got was about the quarterback situation. So I got to at least ask,
Yeah.
what can you give us kind of a lay of the land currently, the quarterback situation here?
Yeah.
What do you think it could look like moving forward, and where things stand?
I feel like we're in a really good place with the quarterbacks. Obviously, I'll really start with Mikey Keene, who transferred
Yeah.
from Fresno,
Great
who's
player.
really great player. And you watch the cut-ups of, Coach Lindsey's showing us things from different places he's been, and then also Mikey Keene shows up on different cut-ups, and the dude can really spin it. He's thrown for over 8,000 yards in his career, and he had, I think, the third highest adjusted completion percentage in college football last year. So he's a guy that's won a lot of football games, has played a lot of football in different environments.
Yeah.
Super smart, excited to have him. Jaden Davis is a guy that just keeps getting better. He was a high-ranked quarterback coming out of high school, and he's here. And then obviously you have Bryce, who's an immense talent. So we're in a really good place, and I'm not going to make any predictions on what it is or who it is or
You can
make
do it
any
on this pod
comments.
if you want.
Yeah, no. So we'll let it play out in spring and fall camp and see what happens.
Yeah. If we sat down, 5 years from now, what do you want Michigan football to look like under Sherrone Moore?
Yeah, obviously I want to win a lot of championships.
Yeah.
But I want it to be a place that people looked at as like, man, those guys play tough. They play physical. Every week it's hard to prepare for them, but they play with a lot of class, a lot of integrity. They do things the right way, and it's a program that when you come there, you better have your lunch pail and get ready, because you're going to be in a dogfight with them on the football field.
I love that. I'd be ready to run through a brick wall.
That's right.
Well, you mentioned the championships. You obviously have a lot of resources here. I'm walking through the new facility.
Yeah.
This place is beautiful. Are there anything on your kind of checklist of things you feel like you still need or this program still needs in order to have the commitment that's needed to win year after year after year after year?
I mean, from a facility standpoint, we got as good as any in the country. From a resources standpoint, I think it just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's just continue to bring in the right people, the right fits from a player standpoint. And, coaches will, you want your coaches to get promoted and get jobs. You want your assistants to be coordinators. So making sure we're bringing the right people in to continue to fill those spots and be at a high level. So if we can continue to do that, we'll be in a great place.
With the new changes with the portal, NIL, everything, and this is where I nerd out and ask some more football type questions. How have you built out your staff from a personnel standpoint? Have you some programs going more towards like a pro model?
Yeah.
You got the pro scouting model essentially. Have you kind of adjusted what your scouting department looks like?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've definitely extended our recruiting department to add, more eyes and more people for different positions. So allowing the coaches to have people to help them in different positions and different alignments, and but hired a GM. Sean McGee is my GM to oversee the NIL and all those. So I don't want to mess with all that and be completely separate from that and allow him to do that. But then you have a scouting really department where our director of player personnel, Albert Carson, heads and allows them to work in between each other, and then obviously I'm the backbone to figure out what the numbers are and what it looks like and how it's all aligned together. So it's been a pretty good, we obviously went through year one and felt like recruiting and transfer portal, we did really well, and look to just continue to build on that.
Yeah. What are the things that you hope when you're done coaching that your players say about you as a coach and a leader?
Yeah, hope they say that on game day, I would do anything for them. I'd run through a wall for them. I would, I want to make him proud every time I stepped on the field. And just in life, that he motivated me to be a better man and a better person, and pushed me to be my best version of myself. I want to get those calls of, hey, I'm having a child.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm getting married. Come to my wedding.
Yeah.
Like those are the calls. Those are the things that you really thrive on. Seeing these young men really go after life.
As I asked that question, I was thinking, you're 39 years old. It ever hit on you? Probably got another 40 years left of this thing.
Yeah, I don't. However many it goes, I'm rolling through it, so I'm ready.
I love it. I love it. Last question I got for you, and I like to end with this. Like, what's your why? What's the reason you do what you do every single day?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah.
And we were in chapel in this room talking about that. So there's a couple. First my family. Do everything for them. My kids, my wife, my mom, my dad. Everything I've ever done in my life, especially my mom and dad, because they've always been there for me when I was a little runt. They took care of me and really motivated me to be great. Then these players, this university, this place provided an opportunity for me, and these players have provided an opportunity for me to be in this place of, high ranking, to be successful. But it's not about me. Michigan is way bigger than me. It's bigger than any player. So for me, it's about them and doing everything I can to make sure that they're in a good place, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that I can put them in.
I love it. I just thought of one more thing I wanted to ask you that
Yeah.
I had on my notes. You've had so much success in your career, and obviously as a young head coach. Could you pick one moment of what you're the most proud of so far?
Oh, the national championship has to be.
It has to be that.
It has to be it. But I'd have to say a really tight, close second is that Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the most incredible games I've ever been a part of. And national championship was awesome, but you probably ask a lot of our players, they'll probably tell you the Rose Bowl over the national championship. And it wasn't necessarily just because it was it was because it was the Rose Bowl, but the setting, the programs, Nick Saban versus Jim Harbaugh.
Can't beat
And I would argue that the Rose Bowl should be the setting for the national championship every year.
Every year.
It's a beautiful place. If you haven't gone, you should go.
Yeah.
It's an outstanding place. The sunset, I remember it's the third, fourth quarter, and we go on that long drive. It's 4 minutes and 41 seconds on the clock. I vividly remember, and I can remember looking over the mountains and the sun setting. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing in college football.
Yeah.
Like, this is where it should be every year. This is where the last game of the year should be here every year.
Agreed.
But those two games are probably it.
Do you like the expanded playoff? Like, do you think it should expand more? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I mean,
you just play ball, man.
Yeah, I mean, you just want to play and get in.
Yeah.
So you want to play and get in, and obviously, this year it showed like you got to get hot at the right time, and you got to be ready to play whenever. And that's what you want if you're a real football guy, if you're a real football coach. Like, yeah, you're going to take losses at some point, but can you bounce back from them? Can you go win when you need to go win? And obviously Ohio did that, and just the whole playoff system. I mean, Notre Dame got to the national championship. They lost early in the year, and they all of a sudden national championship. So like, I love the format. I love more people playing in it. It's awesome to see, and I think our conference is the best one in the country, and
no doubt.
we should get as many automatic qualifiers as everybody else. So I welcome that.
Should probably be more than one, right?
Yeah, it should be more than one. Should be.
How much beating Ohio State this season? Again, like, despite the ups and downs of the year, I mean, the thing that sticks out to me about that game is like just how much you out physicaled them with the line of scrimmage, right? Like, it was almost like Ohio State tried to play Michigan style football, it didn't work. Like, you out Michigan them. Like, how much did that win mean for you to get that on your resume? Not even the resume, just have that happen for the players in your first year.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, it was all about like these players and we went, like I talked about, the Indiana game, and then we had a bye week, and then we had a Monday practice, and it was like one of the most energetic practices we've ever had, just in my whole 7 years. And so you felt really good. We played Northwestern, had a really good game, and then you went into that game, and that's all we think about. We think about the game 365 days a year. So that game's always on our mind, and it'll always stay like that.
Yeah.
So for us, for this program, it was huge, and to get the calls from Tom and Charles and Desmond and all those guys, and then Rich Eisen and Adam Scheffner. of how proud they are of our players, like that did it all, and that's all. That's all you strive for.
Tom's involved. He's calling.
He's involved a little bit now. Like, he's a busy man, so
No
we don't bother him too much. Yeah,
he's happy when the wins come.
That's right.
Well, I told you last question. I had 5 more. So,
That's
but
right. That's
I
all
appreciate
good.
it, man. Listen,
Appreciate you,
it's
man.
been fun following your career and all your success, and I appreciate you having us out. I'm excited to see you win some championships, man. So
Yeah,
it's fun
thank you,
talking to
man.
you. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Next up.